I hope many of you have been writing down questions. I've not received anything yet, so please write down your questions, and they will be brought to me, and then we can engage a dialogue with our speakers. In the meantime, maybe I'll ask one or two questions from you gentlemen. I think we even discussed that before you came on the stage. In Hong Kong, and probably not only in Hong Kong, it's a worldwide phenomenon, but it's probably getting more and more difficult to be young, and education is being more, well, it's getting longer and more complicated. You have a lot of competition. Finding a job is more difficult than it used to be. And in Hong Kong, like in other places too, the cost of real estate is a major problem, and to get on the real estate ladder is a big challenge. All kinds of challenges like that. How do you see the situation, and what solution do you have? So I ask the question for the three of you.
I'll start. The mass proliferation of tertiary education has been, I think, a blessing and a curse. A blessing in the sense that overall society's education and knowledge level has increased, but it has become harder and harder for young people, for new entrants to the job market, to differentiate themselves, which is why I was emphasizing to differentiate yourself, you need more experiences and more unique experiences, more different perspectives. The other thing about jobs is, in Hong Kong, over 40% of our young people are employed in sectors, in industries where there are not that many high-paying jobs, in the sense that the career ladder is very pyramid-shaped. 40% of our young people are employed in areas like retail, food and beverage, logistics. There are high-paying jobs, but they're not easy to find. I think the wider or more long-term solution, the only solution is diversification of our economy. You've seen in Hong Kong in the last 12 months, we've been pushing, the government's been pushing innovation and technology. MIT is setting up a innovation node in Hong Kong. Many overseas universities are coming in to set up research centers, not to teach courses and charge tuition fees, but to actually do research and development in Hong Kong. There's also talk of, in some small scale, re-industrialization in Hong Kong. So I do look forward to these areas as potential new sources of jobs and economic growth for Hong Kong.
Hi. Yeah, I think what you said, George, in terms of the career ladder or the real estate ladder, for a lot of youngsters, it's been a nightmare in Hong Kong. And I actually echo what Ming just said. I believe ultimately the issue lies with whether or not our economy is diversified enough. I think in the past decade or even 2 decades, money has been easy to come by. A lot of we so-called Hong Kongers can make a lot of money in investments, property, finance investments, and so on and so forth. And life was, easier. But I think following, I just mentioned, 2008, for example. Suddenly, Hong Kong as a society economy just realized is no longer that easy. Before, it was very easy to, especially the older generation. It's very easy to, if you work hard, you get rewarded. And I think a lot of times, youngsters have in mind. What youngsters have in mind is, I can work as hard as I could, but I'm not getting anywhere. So I think we need an outlet in terms of how we can develop economy and how we can involve our young people. I mean, obviously in property industries or in finance industries, you don't actually soak up that many young people. But I think more if we find our economy more diversified, there will be more young people, doing something more meaningful. And I think, in the future they're going to be successful because, it's in our DNA to be hardworking and to be outward looking. And I think, I have high hopes, but right now we just need to, focus on how we can diversify our economy.
Thank you. Much has been said, but I think you've hit really the key question. Accommodation, very simple. Move to Nansha. I'm biased. No, to be serious, I think I really believe in the vanishing border. Look, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it wasn't so easy to move across the border, but now it's a simple matter. In the future, when there's a high-speed rail link, it's expected 20 minutes you can get to Guangzhou. So the whole circle is getting smaller. I think if you can create an inducive place, people would not mind, to live further away from Hong Kong or wherever it may be. I think this is one thing. Secondly, I think opportunity. I really echo our speakers. Actually, I don't think that there are no opportunities or it's getting harder. It's just opportunities that are different nowadays. Traditional industries, it might be difficult, but there are new industries coming up, like the internet, high-tech, technology, etc., etc. I think the key is really firstly, to diversify, as Ming says. Maybe government initiative can really push new industries into new heights. But secondly, there's a mismatch. So how to match industry with the interest of our young people nowadays? We shouldn't really put on them that old, if you work hard, if you stay in the job for 10 years, then you move up the ladder. It might not work like this anymore. But nowadays, I think it's more the young people are looking for something they're passionate about. That's been studied and shown. Like they will not necessarily take a job with a higher pay, but they would take a job that interests them or they think is worthwhile. So I think the landscape is changing. How can we leverage this, and how can we present more opportunities to young people? I think it deserves our looking into. And just to do a bit of advertisement, I think really look beyond our borders. Look, I'm not just saying mainland China all the time. Look internationally as well. And you can join, young people can join one of the internship programs subvented by COI. I think it will really open your eyes and then really, put experience behind your belt, and then you could be in a better position to look for opportunities.
Thank you very much. So I'll read a couple of the questions from the floor. I have an interesting question here in front of a double question from a delegate from the US. Do you see that the Hong Kong youth resent the major influx of young talent from mainland China, and which is, of course, making a lot of competition for them? And another question, you've been educated, the three of you, in the UK. What do you think of the education system in Hong Kong? And another question was, you've been to the UK. Do you think there is enough welcome for foreign students in Hong Kong?
You expert in education system. He researched into this area.
So the first question was, what do I make of the resentment or the alleged resentment against mainland Chinese talent, and perhaps I guess students, mainland Chinese students as well. It's true that you do hear voices of resentment, though I'm not sure the resentment is the only way to deal with this fact. The truth is this: those from mainland China who are fortunate or good enough to come and study in Hong Kong or work in Hong Kong are probably the top 0.5% of talent from China. The other top 0.5% are probably in the UK or US. So in that sense, our youth, our young people in Hong Kong are pitched against some of the very best China has to offer. It's competitive for sure, but I don't think we should simply resent or feel bad about it. I think it's important to learn from them, to copy, to emulate them where appropriate, their attitude, their competitiveness. I think directly engaging with them is more useful in towards making yourself more competitive than them or than other young people around the world. The second one is welcoming of foreigners abroad. And by the way, I probably went to among all three of us, the best university in the UK. It's neither Oxford or Cambridge. It's London. In my days, London, of course, for those who've been, London is extremely welcoming to people from overseas. London is like New York, I think, doesn't have any issue with foreign students, foreign talent, foreigners generally. So in that sense, I don't think, in my experience back then, there were any unwelcoming or untowards feelings. There might be now. There might be now because of the change in the tuition fee structure in the UK. There might be now because economic times have changed. There may be now because not necessarily from people from Asia, but I think the UK is having a major soul searching going on with its relationship with the EU in terms of competition for university places, competition for jobs, competition for social services, competition for business. So there's a lot of that soul searching going on. But certainly in my days, there were no resentment.
I think just quickly, I'm aware the time is out, but Hong Kong, as you all know, is an open economy. The reason why we grew, the reason why we're successful is because we welcome everyone with open arms. No matter if it's businesses, individuals from every corner of the world, we welcome, as long as they contribute to the economy of Hong Kong. And this is mainland China, this is no exception. Been welcoming everyone from the 60s, 70s, or whatever it may be. China's experienced massive growth, and now we just have a phase of exporting talent. People are moving to not just Hong Kong, everywhere around the world. And this, can we use it to leverage to heighten or take our economic prosperity to the next level? I think this is how we can leverage on. It's very easy to sit here and blame and say, oh, they're taking all our jobs, they're taking all our university places. But I just do hope that we don't end up or produce this kind of fear and also this mentality of protectionism, using policy or using government policy to stop people coming. Well, if you're going to stop mainland Chinese students to come, are you going to stop students from UK or students from US to come? Then slowly we'll be losing our competitive edge because of this protectionist measure. So I think it's important to open arms. Hong Kong companies survive because we've been at the edge of competition all the time. So should our young people. It's easy to say, but at the same time, the flip side of the coin, we can go out. We've got advantages, our young people. If you can think or experience jobs or experiences outside your comfort zone, you would also excel, not just in mainland China, but also everywhere around the world. So I hope that we could develop this kind of sense of cooperation, 1 + 1 = 3, rather than sitting very comfortably in Hong Kong, putting up a barrier slowly by slowly, and making people reject us, to be frank. So how we move forward, I think, is the key.
Yeah, I agree with Ming and Kenneth. Hong Kong young people cannot bury our heads in the sand. The economy has changed. The world has changed. As I just mentioned, the challenges that we face as a business also change. And it's very important for Hong Kong young people to bear that in mind and not just try to lock themselves in and believe that if Hong Kong stays, if they freeze the time, that would be the happiest thing that happened to them. I've heard that from some young people. Why do Hong Kong needs to develop? Why can't we just stay now? Why do we need to build, for example, another runway in the airport? When we actually interviewed for certain programs, we have an exchange program, well, not exchange, but a visiting program to Harbin in China, and Kenneth and I went together with the kids, the students, and they were saying, we were asking what was the major, what attracted them? Why would they wanted to come on the tour? And they said, they want to speak to mainland students and understand their thought, their thinkings. And I said, hang on a minute, you guys are also in Hong Kong University or Chinese University. You guys share a dormitory. Some of them actually shared a dormitory with mainland students. I said, why don't you speak to them? They said, oh, no, I never had a chance, never had the urge. And that's the issue. And not just from Hong Kong, student side, but we also hear from the mainland Chinese students, they don't want to speak to us, they prejudice against us. It's, how we actually create that dialogue between students. We've been educated in the UK, and when we're at university, we speak to, fellow students from all around the world. And I think Hong Kong students, as well as mainland Chinese students, or any foreign students, we actually have a fair amount of students from Malaysia as well, as I believe in Malaysia and Singapore. There should be a lot of dialogues, and that's networking. In the future, 10 years from graduation, that networking will still stand. So I think it's important Hong Kong young people do not bury their heads in the sand. Thank you.
I think just quickly on education system, something popped into my head. I think as everyone knows that traditional Asian thinking is that you got to be a lawyer, doctor, and all that to be successful. And then the whole education is actually very geared towards result orientated. So everything is about DSC, everything is about final exams, and everything can be put on the side. But as international crowd would know, actually I think education is more than that. How can you encapsulate more sports, culture, etc., into the education program to make a more well-rounded person? I think that's something that we could work towards. And secondly, about vocational training. I think now the whole system is geared towards you have to go to university to become a successful person. So you end up, because unfortunately university subsidization is limited, there's limited places. A lot of people in the reality is you actually do not enter university. Does that mean they're unsuccessful? But look at Europe, for example, in Germany. If you're a blue-collar worker, if you, for example, car mechanic, it's a very highly regarded job, and often it pays more than a white collar, and they are society-wise view them as equals. But unfortunately, in a lot of Asian societies, and the government set up a task force to review this, it's actually there's still this kind of bias towards blue-collar workers. So how can we, through the education, promote or even encourage, as our chief executive says, actually you're born, there's always a skill and strength in everyone, but how can you leverage on this instead of all being sucked into the same stream, the same river, entering university or if not higher dip or whatever it may be. Really have a diverse economy. I think this is also a key moving forward for Hong Kong in education.
Well, thank you very much. And in fact, I'm quite pleased that you brought up this matter of vocational training, because I had several questions, in fact, from the floor on that topic. Do we still have time for one question? Or is it? Yeah. So I have also a question which is very brief, but for people who, the three of you are very familiar with the youth, what the young people think and what they feel in Hong Kong. So the question is, I don't know who asked it. I have no indication of who asked the question, but it's probably on the mind of many people. What's your view on Occupy Hong Kong?
I'll go. You want to go first?
Please go ahead.
Official line or?
I'll go first because you know, Occupy is coming up to the first anniversary of its ending, first anniversary generally. And we also last week had our district elections. It was our first elections since the Occupy movement. And I think if you follow Hong Kong news or read Hong Kong news every day, every pundit, every commentator has extrapolated everything and anything out of it. I actually think it's too early to tell. What has Occupy achieved or accomplished so far relative to its original aim or original objective? What has it achieved? I don't know yet. I don't know because I think it's the time we have given it to settle down, for the movement, for the sentiment to settle down, is not long enough to really offer a proper diagnosis. It certainly has divided society, because I think at the end of the Occupy movement, I think it was almost an opinion polls were a 50-50 split on for and against. It certainly has divided, but I think it's too early to tell whether it has any constructive or destructive effect on Hong Kong's political landscape and society generally. I think it's just too early to tell.
I think, in a sense, when Occupy Central happened, they obviously agreed with Ming it was a divided society. I think at that time it was very difficult, particularly for myself, to see what happened from both sides, I would think. From a political goal that they set, the whole movement set out to do, obviously it kind of failed. It didn't achieve what it wanted. But at the end of the day, it sort of add to the experience or the portfolio or the history of each and every one of us in Hong Kong. It was a very widely participated event. Not that physically they don't go Occupy China, but I think for every breakfast, lunch, and dinner amongst co-workers, it's been discussed. So it's a huge political event from that sense. But I think it also would help put a lot of us in Hong Kong into perspective. Yes, it was, in my opinion, it was destructive. It was a way that certain parts of Hong Kong wants to demonstrate, that they can be, they could, act on certain threats and to demand, I would say, to demand, or for the government to meet their demands. But I think on the other hand, a lot of us after the Occupy Central, whether or not we are for or against, realize that Hong Kong should not or does not have the ability to stage that sort of demonstration for some time to come. I think it was, it was quite damaging in a lot of sense. I'm not trying to blame the Occupy Central guys for everything, but it's just exposed the division of the two sort of ideology or the two thoughts. There are a lot of things that followed and continued. For example, there were the unpleasant demonstration against mainland Chinese shoppers or whatever. But we don't see a lot of support. At least personally, I don't see a lot of support for all these sort of programs or campaigns that followed. I think ultimately this is only it's not an event that sort of will trigger a lot of changes, I don't think. It's just a process or part of the whole trend. Things like this happened all around the world. A lot of you guys would know. and it also happened in Hong Kong. I was just happy that it was ended peacefully. And I have to say that at that time, I thought, in the future, Hong Kong society is going to be so divided that the people who are for it will not speak, will not speak to the people who are against it. But at the end of the day, I just find that is probably not the case. People, it's just like, you're arguing with your wife, and you have one idea, where to go for dinner, and the wife has another, and you have a big fight. Dinner's cancelled. The next day, you still have to live with that person, and I just think, you find the differences, you respect the difference. It didn't happen last night, Kenneth. You actually you find the differences, and you somehow, there's a respect in terms of you think differently to me in that topic, but will we be able to find certain parts that we will agree in the future? I think we are. Of anything, I think it just helped Hong Kong people, especially Hong Kong young people, grow in terms of seeing things more from different perspective. That's what I hope anyway. But in a lot of sense, I agree with Ming. Why, I think we'll probably need a couple more years to see how things are. But it definitely has a lot of effect on people who participated physically in Occupy Central, and also people, like us, who, in a sense, did not want to see something like that happen. Thank you.
Do you want to add something?
Just very quickly, I think most points have been covered. But as everyone knows, the whole movement was sparked or started because of the electoral reform, or so-called universal suffrage. But I don't believe for a second that everyone who participated is on the street for one single cause. As we see the whole thing, or the whole movement unfold, actually you see people with mixed emotions, people who deeply believe in a political movement, some people with some sympathy, some people as a support group. Actually, it's not as simple, it's not as easy to just say why it occurred, but it's a multiplex of reasons. But one overriding agenda, one overriding theme is actually young people. I think what has really come out from this movement, I don't agree in the method of doing it, but I think really highlighted I hate to use the word problems, but issues surrounding youth, which we discussed earlier. So it's not just about universal suffrage, but actually housing prices, etc., etc. It's all in the basket. And what's come out after 1 year is that we've seen the society really looking into youth issues from a different angle. The government has, different federation has, really trying to put out a helping hand. How we do it, I think it's too early to tell. There's many years down the road. But the issue's on the table, and hopefully we could turn this into something positive and really help cross-generation or help the next generation achieve what we spoke about today.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think we had a very stimulating discussion. The presentations were very, very enlightening. And in summary, what I will remember from this presentation and discussion is that really one can be totally optimistic about the future of Hong Kong. In your family, you had several generations of great leaders with a great vision for your business and for the future, and we see the three of you now. You also have that vision for the future, and the other thing is that what I admire in Hong Kong is that business leaders, of course, are very dedicated to their business, but at the same time, they want to contribute to society. And we have the example here with the three of you. So thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you very much for the good work we do for Hong Kong.